Tracy Wheeler of Endwell is with us today to talk about the work Endwell is doing to facilitate discussions about end-of-life care. You're connected with the Heart of Hospice. I'm Helen Bauer, here with Jerry Finter.
Whether you're a family caregiver or an end-of-life professional, we're here to enhance your hospice experience by connecting you with information you can use about end-of-life care. Today's episode is sponsored by our friends at GrandPad. Do you have an older family member who's isolated, or do you feel disconnected from a senior loved one who lives at a distance? The folks at GrandPad have come up with the perfect solution, an easy-to-use device that connects older adults with family and friends using video chat, email, photo sharing, and more. Visit grandpad.net for details.
Our guest today, Tracy Wheeler, is the Executive Director of Endwell. If you haven't heard of it, Endwell is an organization working to bring together a community to transform how the world thinks about caregiving, grief, illness, and the end-of-life experience.
Endwell was started by Shoshana Ungerleider, and she is a physician who saw this need, this gap that needed to be filled and started the Endwell project, and it has been incredible. I have gone into their website, and there's just multiple videos of presentations done by people who just have this understanding because of their experience in end-of-life care. And so I'm just so impressed by what Endwell is doing.
They're having these big conversations that are so important, so timely. I'd like to say post-pandemic. Who knows if we're really in the post-pandemic phase? We hope we are. But Endwell is doing some amazing work, and they were doing it before the pandemic started.
That's right.
Their ultimate goal is creating a future where ending well, dying, becomes a measure of living well. So they have some fantastic ideas. Tracy Wheeler has been with them since January of 2022, and she's got some wonderful things to share. So here's our interview with Endwell's Tracy Wheeler.
Tracy, we are so honored to have you on the Heart of Hospice podcast. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Jerry, and thank you, Helen. It's such an honor to be here.
We're so glad to get to know you. So we're going to jump right in with an icebreaker question of my own devising.
Oh, this could be scary.
Oh.
Yes, and there was a lot of forethought, at least 3 seconds of forethought put into this question. If you had only one color of clothes in your wardrobe, what color would it be and why?
It would be navy. Because my mom tried to convince me that purple worked best with my reddish hair. And I decided that actually navy works almost as well as purple and is much easier to mix and match into a wardrobe. I'm wearing navy right now, although it's hard to tell.
That's awesome. That's my
that's
favorite color.
exciting.
No, that is exciting. I love that. Navy blue is actually my favorite color.
Oh, okay, good. I mean, sometimes I wish I was like a hot pink person or, one of those brighter people. And I love those colors. When I paint, I use a ton of really beautiful colors. But when I dress, I like my navy and then jewelry. I didn't wear any jewelry because I didn't want any noises.
Right.
Oh.
No. So you're an artist, Tracy?
I am. I love to paint with oils. When I left my job at Gap, I sort of went through a whole getting in touch with myself, processing, leaving the fashion industry by getting into art. And I did a lot of painting, and I still try to do some painting, but I also curate. I mostly support artists. That's my side job.
Right. That's awesome. So is your painting a form of self-care for you?
Yes, which means that I'm not really taking care of myself very well right now.
You can have more than one way, more than one form of self-care.
Getting a dog has been a huge thing. And walking, I think it's really my main thing. And we just got stand-up paddle boards, and that is amazing.
Awesome. Where do you go to paddleboard?
Well, they're inflatable, so we can go anywhere. And
Nice.
We have been on the Petaluma River. We have been on the Russian River. We have been in the Bolinas Lagoon, which is north of San Francisco. And we're going to the San Francisco Bay tomorrow.
Oh, awesome. I got an inflatable paddleboard for Christmas, which is a little bit odd. And I haven't used it yet because we either had cold weather or we had severe heat.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm all for the sunshine, but they're pushing it at this point.
Yeah. You don't want to be standing up trying to maintain your balance and, ready to pass out from the heat. That's just not a good combination.
Right. So I like it. I
Oh,
like it.
That is awesome. Okay, so we understand that you have been the executive director for Endwell since January or February of this year. Is that right?
January 15th is when I started. Yep.
That is awesome. So for our listeners who don't know about Endwell, tell us about the mission and the purpose of Endwell.
We founded Endwell, Shoshana Ungerleider, who is a physician, founded Endwell in 2017. I've been working with her since, started as a curator and just a people idea generator. And she founded it it's become the leading movement dedicated to improving the end of life experience for everyone. She founded it initially really to focus on palliative care, but quickly figured out that within the medical profession, there's still a lot of silos happening and a lot of people talking to themselves. And it was great that she reached out to the team that brought me on, they were really much more focused on big culture transformation. And so very early on, the focus for Endwell has been how do we radically shift the culture around end of life and normalize these conversations and these experiences so that people aren't so alone, so that they're more aware of the choices and decisions that are available to them. So they're more proactive in having those conversations because, one of the things we do know is that most doctors aren't trained to have these conversations. Nurses aren't trained to have these conversations, though, because they're often at the bedside, they do become the de facto people having them in many cases. But we know that just culturally, we're not prepared for this. So that's why Endwell was founded. We had 3 in-person convenings, 2017, 2018, and 2019, and we were all set to have a really big one in 2020, and then, of course, COVID. So we shifted, and we had an online convening that was enormous. We had over 20,000 registrants, which was just, we were only really able to accommodate like 650 prior to that. And that was 2020. And then in 2021, we did a deep dive into psychedelics and end of life. But we currently were mostly about the resources that live on our website, endwellproject.org, because that's the best way for us to reach people. And I can go into some of the bigger cultural stuff we're doing as well.
Well, so who's your audience? Who can benefit from accessing the resources that Endwell has?
I would say it's everyone. We definitely are reaching I would say, end of life curious as well as the people who are in it. And that's mostly women. For some reason, women have been deputized by our society to be, I think because they're often the caregivers. They're the ones who are facing this transition as a person goes from serious illness into, a more active state of dying. Everything ramps up. They have to figure out, what do we do? Hopefully conversations have been had, upstream, but often they haven't. And so we're getting a lot, we get thousands and thousands of people visiting our website every month. And because we get a lot of incoming emails, we know that a lot of people are looking for resources. And right now, it's most people are asking us about death doulas, which is a brand new thing for us, and psychedelics. So I think people are really looking for any avenues that provide comfort and guidance and a sense of purpose. How do we now help our loved one or myself, if I'm the person, who's seeing that I'm going to be going through this? How do I kind of wrap up or make sense of my life? How do I feel the best I can about this? And that's where we have a lot of different resources. We don't have as many as we want, frankly. We would love to have a lot more. So fundraising is our hurdle always. So everybody and men, please step up.
Yeah. Yes, please.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is about the society in the United States that women have just been the default.
Yep.
I mean, I've seen it in hospice when there are multiple children,
Yep.
it falls to the daughter. And yet I have seen male caregivers do amazingly wonderful jobs at providing care.
I don't think it's that male caregivers can't provide incredible care and might even notice things that women might not notice. I'm making that up, but maybe we don't know, unfortunately, because there aren't as many as we would like. And I don't think that there are the studies. And of course, it's really difficult to study people who are in the thick of it, right? That's a whole other layer of burden
Right.
for that person to open themselves up to that level of scrutiny and vulnerability. But I think it's more a cultural thing that it's not how men's roles are depicted. We're seeing men in general, I think, really struggling with what their roles are, with vulnerability. And I think there's also something that's kind of interesting to me when I watch a lot of television, and we're seeing a lot more about grief on TV. And when it's a grieving guy, the storyline generally is this is the worst thing that's ever happened to him in his life, and he's horribly stuck, angry and bitter. Everything from Ricky Gervais. You know, it's kind of incredible, and I think that also leads men to believe that this is going to ruin their lives. And of course, it's horrible for everybody. But I think the narrative around women in grief is more like it's a transformative moment, not a really stuck, horrible moment. And that's not, of course, how it plays out. Everybody has a different relationship to grieving. But so downstream or upstream, I always get confused. I think the caregiving thing is like, I don't want to engage with that because this is scary and it's going to hurt a lot. And I don't know how to deal with pain. I don't know how to deal with vulnerability. And I may also have some issues around this flipping of the script where now my often parent, needs a level of care that is just weird to me as a child, right? I think women are just more like, oh, I don't really
Right.
want to do that either, but I'm going to roll up my sleeves and do it, you know.
So maybe we're actually getting into a topic that needs to be addressed. Perhaps that's something that Endwell might want to consider. Maybe we do need to discuss this topic of why are men not caregivers by and large. I mean, it's not always true, but why are there not more men who are caregivers?
Or why aren't they accessing the resources that are out there?
We do, and there's actually quite a number of them. I think what we do know is that, and Alex Drain has done a lot of really good work around this, around sort of caregiving and stuff. But I think we know that there are a lot of caregivers who don't identify as caregivers. And anecdotally, talking to some of my relatives who are caregivers, males, I don't think they like that term. I think for them, this is more about duty and showing up and being a good partner. And caregiver somehow is laden and maybe too feminine. I don't know what it is, but it's just not something that's comfortable for them. So it might be that we need to kind of expand the language around that role. And we are trying to, at Endwell, we are inviting, as many men as we can into the conversation. We've had some great people on talking about both caregiving and grief, and end of life. Justin Baldoni. We've had, it's been really good. Tim McGraw talked about hospice and caring for his father. And that was a super complicated one because he and his father didn't even get along, right?
Right,
So
right.
that makes it like, okay, if Tim McGraw can care for his father and he didn't really get along with him, then I think anybody can care for somebody, because it's really just, this is what I do now. I've been tagged and I'm going to step into this role, And the other thing is there are no like do-overs. You don't do it, you don't show up, you can never go back and do that.
Right. It's the worst on the job training you can get.
It is. It is.
Yeah, you're not really there's no roadmap. There's not really an instruction manual. It's kind of like having a baby. There's some books that'll help you, but because each caregiving experience is unique, you're really figuring it out in the dark. And and not everybody wants to be a caregiver.
No, not everybody's cut out for it.
Right.
I mean, that's the case. And I think that if we invited more, let's say the siblings into caring for their parents, we might see which of them is the best one. It may not be the sister, right? It might be one of the brothers. But I think that there's also, and this might sound, this might be too reductive, but I do think that in general, the cultural idea of men is that they're problem solvers. And men don't like, this is what I hear. I don't know if this is true. It's true in my relationship, but men don't like problems that can't be solved. And these are not problems that can be solved. I mean, there are tactical things that can be solved, right? You can solve, I'm watching my mother try to get up the stairs and she keeps grasping for a handrail that's not there. Okay, put in a handrail. You can solve that. That does take a degree of empathy and paying attention. But mom is still going to die and she still feels terrible and she might still be depressed with or without that handrail. So there's an amazing talk that August de los Reyes gives. And he's a designer. It's an End Well talk. And he really talks about love being the biggest kind of impetus for problem solving. And that if you let yourself love and really lean into the experience the other person's having, you'll probably come up with some good solutions. The saddest thing is August died early on in the COVID pandemic from COVID-related complications. He was in a wheelchair and was probably much more vulnerable than most. So anyway, that's a really interesting talk. I think if we bring it back to love, it's great.
During the pandemic, older adults who live alone have been more isolated than ever. My mom is the perfect example. She lives in a senior living community that went into lockdown, not only requiring her to stay in her apartment, but also restricting all of her family from visiting. GrandPad gave us the perfect solution to stay connected. Using the video chat option, we were able to see my mom and really know how she was. All of us in her private family network were able to share photos and messages about what we were doing so she knew we were okay. My mom was really skeptical about using the device at first. She still has a flip phone and doesn't even own a computer. GrandPad comes with a 4G LTE cellular service already included, so there is no need for Wi-Fi. All of us in my mom's private network have shared photos and videos. We even sent her special videos on her 88th birthday, even though we couldn't celebrate in person. Mom has learned to use email, play bridge and solitaire, and listen to music she loves on her GrandPad. We are so grateful to the folks at GrandPad for allowing us to stay connected. You can purchase a GrandPad subscription for your loved one at grandpad.net. Now on to today's episode.
So I have been really impressed with the amount of resources that you have on the End Well website. It's just incredible. All these videos of the talks that have been recorded through the years. So tell our listeners more about the resources that you have on the End Well website for end of life planning and really, who can access these? Is it open to anyone? Is it free for anyone? Is there any cost at all involved?
There's no cost. It's
no cost.
very
That's
central
awesome.
to our.
That's why she's smiling so big.
Yeah.
There's no cost.
There's no cost. So we have had over 100 amazing talks, and those talks are all available on our website. And then there's some additional behind the scenes information with everybody from Esther Perel to Justin Faldoni. We've had people like Alicia Garza, who was talking about her mother being in hospice. She was the last person at the Zen Hospice Center in San Francisco, which is, beautiful and sad because it was such a great model. We have everything from talking about design from the perspective of a woman who is over 90 years old, whose tagline is "Design with us, not for us," which is beautiful. We've had a tween talking about the loss of grief and the loss of her father. As I said, we had Tim McGraw. We've had and anybody can access all of this incredible content. There's a lot of, I would say all the tough stuff is really wrapped around by the beauty and joy and just fierceness that a lot of our speakers are bringing to this. So Jessica Hansen talking about the day that her son died from an accident in her driveway, and how she feels that his death was the gold standard of deaths. And now, as a first responder, she's teaching other first responders to allow the family more into that experience. That's a tough one. It's going to be one of the ones in our podcast, by the way. But it's just so amazing and beautiful and filled with incredible information. All of it's there, all of it's free, all of it, I think, is really high quality. We were incredibly lucky in the sense that we started from the very, very beginning, putting, an enormous amount of our very limited resources into the quality of the production and the quality of the filming and recording and the quality of the event, which served us incredibly well, because Shoshana just started putting these videos up on YouTube without any strategy. And they started taking off. And then we realized that we can host them both on YouTube, but also on our website. Please come to our website, not YouTube, because then we'll know that you've been there, and we'll be able to tell our funders how many people love us, which is, a metric that people notice. It's made a huge difference. I think that this focus on quality, and then there's another little secret to our talks, and that is that we ask every single person to bring an entirely new approach, concept, thinking to their talk. These are not there. This isn't like a book tour where you've already read the book and then you go hear the author speak about the book, and then it's exactly the same talk that you hear, online. Everybody does something fresh, and many people we are working with have never even thought about talking about the space. Like Esther Perel had never really done a deep dive into her thinking and her experience with couples who had gone through serious illness or were at end of life. And we invited her to do this, and she said yes, which was incredible, of course. And that's often the case, that people, when I call them, are like, what? I don't do end of life. And then I say to them, but we all do end of life. And that's one of the big problems with our culture, is that we think that there are people out there who've been deputized to do all this, and there really aren't. Doctors haven't been taught to talk about it. Even the ones, palliative care, of course, but that's a really very small number of people relative to the number of people who die. Clergy, oddly, haven't really been taught to talk about this. I mean, that blew my mind. And we haven't been taught to talk about this. So yeah, there's nobody. So it's us. This is the moment, everybody, to change this culture.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting that two of the major professions that ought to have a good handle on death and dying, physicians and clergy, don't.
It's so weird.
They just simply don't. It is. It's really weird. So Endwell has a lot of physicians who have been presenters,
yes,
for the information. Dr. B.J. Miller, Dr. Ira Byock, Shoshana.
Yep.
So there's been several doctors who have been presenters on there. How do we get the doctors to go seeking this information, or how do we get the information to them? I'm still puzzled sometimes when I realize that there are so many doctors and clergy out there. I'm one of the clergy, so I'm talking to my people here. How do we get them to engage with this? Because it's, okay, 100% of people are going to die. We know this. That statistic's not going to change. It's not going to go down. How do we get people to realize we need to engage with this? We need to talk about it. And I really like what Endwell is doing to make this happen and to really put the the conversation out there in front of people so that they'll hear it. So why do you think these conversations about end of life are so important? Why is this? Why are we not talking about these things? I guess is what it comes down to.
Well, it's super scary. I mean, I have to admit that this is still scary to me. I'm never going to wake up and say, "Oh, yay, I'm going to die." Like that's just not probably going to happen for me.
Right.
And that's okay. There's a lot of other scary things that we do, right? We get on airplanes. That's scary when you think about it. And that's actually something you get to choose. So I think it's because it's scary. Death anxiety is definitely a real thing. Our culture has lost a lot of hands-on experience, as bodies moved out of the home, as sick people moved out of the home and into institutions. Those institutions became the places where these things happened. Unfortunately, one of those institutions is, hospitals and healthcare. And doctors are trained to save lives. This is not their thing. Most of them are not comfortable with this. It feels like a ding against them. It's not like what they want to deal with. And I think that our medical schools aren't teaching doctors that you can still have a lot of influence over your patient, the trajectory of your patient's health and wellness, even after there's no way to keep them alive beyond a certain point. And in fact, trying to keep them alive beyond that certain point may be the worst thing that you're doing for them, right?
Right.
But we have to help doctors, hold these two ideas in their heads, which is, I'm trained to save lives and this person's dying. How do I take that training and say, well, what I'm saving now is the rest of their life from pain, suffering, misery, depression, all of the terrible things that happen, most of which is like how isolating these experiences are.
Exactly.
So how do we help doctors understand this? I mean, one of our strategies is to just get super juicy, amazing physicians on our stage. Jessica Zutter is a great one. She and Don Gross had a great conversation. BJ Miller, I think, is like the philosopher king of this whole world. Ira Byock is like, he's like the mystery writer of this whole world. He makes it all kind of unfold in a way that you go, what happens next? What happens next? He's a great writer. And I think that that's really important. We need clergy to step up. Something is not happening. And Jerry, you would know better than I. Why are we not training clergy to dive into this a little bit more? I think that clergy in this country covers a lot of different religions, and a lot's going on within those religions right now that make these conversations maybe less hopeful than some of them have kind of grounded their theology in. That's just kind of my reading of what's going on with some directions of religion, where it's just like, if it's not hopeful, then we don't want to talk about it. Okay. And I think that we have to examine suffering. And as a country that came out of kind of a Puritan background, are some of our clergy and are we as a culture believing that suffering somehow brings you closer to, a better place after you die? I think we accept suffering. Some channels of our society accept that degrees of suffering that the rest of us might consider to be absolutely unacceptable are okay. That's just a hunch.
There's so much to unpack.
But
I can feel my
really
soapbox coming. So I want to touch back. I want to touch back on the groups. So for just an observation, when it comes to silos, nothing is more siloed than religion in this country.
That's right.
Intolerance, misconception, judgment. You don't even get that much in the specialties across healthcare. And we do have some of that. We
Yeah,
do have
yeah.
some of that intolerance across healthcare. But this is what I would say. So when we talk about physicians, yes, I understand that formal education does not include typically instruction on death and dying. Same thing for nurses. We had a conversation with BJ Miller a while back, and I said, in nursing school, all of us had to go through a labor and delivery class, but we know not everybody's going to have a baby. And we know everybody's going to die, but we do not have a class on death and dying.
It's weird.
There may be specialty. Yeah, it is. It's upside down. So let's talk about, this is going to sound tough. I would group nurses in here and even maybe social workers with physicians. There's got to be some professional accountability. You can't look back after having practiced for 15, 20 years and say, nobody ever taught me. I don't know about this. There's education out there. Go and get it. And I would say that not to just physicians, not to just nurses, not to just social workers, all of them. Same thing. If you're going to work in end-of-life care, go get the education that you need. So I think there's got to be some level of professional accountability. And I mean, I'm talking to my own people, my own discipline. But I would say if you are making a decent living and this is how you want to earn your living, be good at it. Educate yourself. There are resources out there. Don't sit there and say, I never received that training. I never receive any ongoing training. Go out there and get it.
Yeah. And Idwell's got the resources right there.
Yeah. There's so many different ways to access. So I can feel the hackles on the back of my neck coming up with this because I just think we sit back and let it happen. It's the elephant in the room that everybody knows about, and we all now talk about it. The pandemic has laid us completely bare when it comes to our weaknesses.
Absolutely.
And that leads us to the next topic that we really want to talk about is diversity. Diversity in end-of-life care and diverse engagement. What used to be considered minority populations, brown and black, Pacific Island, Asian, accessing hospice in the United States. There's such a reduction in their engagement in hospice and end-of-life care. And InWell is very committed to diversity.
Absolutely.
So tell us how does diversity offend? That's probably wrong. How does diversity affect end-of-life care and these advanced care planning conversations that we should be having in the U.S.?
Well, in so many ways. So end of life, of course, is the end of your experience with all that's happened prior to that. And if a lot of what's happened prior to that has been insufficient access, racial profiling, a history of, some terrible things around testing and experiments. And I mean, this is just culturally a minefield for people of color. We still know that if you look at the medical records and the notes that practitioners have taken, they are way more likely to have negative comments about people of color than white people, right? So already you've been treated as if you're not being compliant. Nobody's listening to your life and asking you, well, you're supposed to take a walk. Well, what if I live in a neighborhood where walking after dark is really dangerous? I mean,
right.
So you've got those issues. You've got issues around who's going to have these conversations if people are being treated mostly through emergency rooms or through small clinics that are horribly understaffed and under-resourced. This is not a conversation that people have time for necessarily. So you've got that issue. You've got issues around just cultural appropriateness. Who should be having these conversations? Probably clergy. Like, we do know that there's an incredible movement amongst some faith-based leaders to bring these conversations out into the community through themselves and through the kind of the trusted lay people in their group, right, who are out there helping have these conversations. We know that not inviting religion into the room in the hospital is a problem, that whether or not clergy is trained to have the conversation about end of life, clergy are trained to provide comfort and to be there for people and to help them feel that they're being held by their God, by whatever they believe in. That gives them a sense of meaning, purpose, and as I said, being held and being heard. And so when we don't invite clergy into the room because they might have a different religion than we do or whatever, we're really blocking a whole other access of trust and comfort for people. And I think that it makes a big difference. And, that's what some data is showing. We have other issues where we have people like Bridget Hempstead, who's one of our speakers, who God told her when she was turning 40 that she had breast cancer. And she went to her doctor, and her doctor didn't want to screen her for breast cancer because there's no way, the doctor had been trained, that Black women don't get breast cancer in the same numbers as white women. Well, Black women and other ethnic groups do get breast cancer, and the breast cancers they get tend to be much more aggressive, much more terrible, and much more under recognized. And so the rate of death is way higher. So imagine this: you have been told that you had to fight to get screened. You're not going to trust this healthcare system after that. And I would also say that maybe some of the language that we're using around words like advocate are a little, yes, you have to advocate for yourself, but that's kind of a burden, right? Like it's already saying you're in a contentious relationship with this system. And if you just take 2 seconds and think about it, it's like, well, that's not great. I'm in a contentious relationship with most of this society. And now, I'm at my most vulnerable. I need an expert, and I need to trust that expert, because no matter how much Googling I do, I can't ever know as much as my physician, a well-trained physician who actually listens to me. So there's just so many layers. And this is why we've been focused on diversity from the beginning. We have to have people on the stage who are representing as broad a cross-section of our society as possible. We have to invite people who are on that stage to be honest. And if that honesty includes anger, it includes confusion, it includes depression. Like, this is this person's experience. We do not ask people to tidy it up and make it neater and make it easier to listen to. And I think that's also really important, because asking people to then moderate their experience down to this, like, very acceptable, and then this happened to me and that was really tough, that's not right. So
It's not real.
it's not real.
But I get what you're saying about advocacy. Basically, what it says is you have to push to get something that they don't want to give you.
That's right.
When you're already grieving, sick, tired, confused. I mean, let's face it, half the people that work in the healthcare industry don't understand the systems they work in. I don't even understand my own personal health insurance.
Yep. And there's a lot of gotchas.
Yeah.
I mean, just can I go to this doctor's appointment, or is there going to be an unexpected, cost? Even after I've called my insurance company and I've gotten all of the approvals, am I going to put my family into jeopardy? This is the other thing that we don't talk about enough, is that we're talking about populations that, this is also reductive. There are many people of color who have wealth, who are doing very well in this country. We don't see those stories enough. We don't hear from those people enough, but there are a lot of people who don't have generational wealth. There's just so many things that have happened, and these healthcare costs could destroy the people they leave behind.
Sure.
So healthcare needs to be open, transparent, let people know what the pricing is, not be messing around with people's lives, not be messing around with their futures. We've got Medicare that can go in there, or Medicaid can go in and they can take homes. People don't know this. White people have access to things like trust and estate lawyers and conversations in their community about, how do I protect my assets? I don't think those are happening. So it's just layers and layers of inequity.
Right.
You know, something you said stuck with me when you're talking about something as simple as telling a patient how to take care of themselves. You should get out and have a walk every day. And they don't live in a safe neighborhood. It's the same thing as if you told them, you need to eat a balanced diet. You're diabetic, you need this and this and this. And yet they live in a neighborhood that's a food desert.
Or I would call it a food dessert, because all that's available is sweets, right?
Is the junk.
It's just
right.
It's the worst. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe the people in healthcare have physicians and nurses have an unrealistic view of what that's like.
Definitely.
I don't know what the racial mix is inside healthcare.
Well, it's not great. It's certainly not representative of the population. And we also have to be careful that in helping people understand the lived realities of their patients, they're not then creating these stereotypes about people that on other levels will complicate looking at the whole person. So I think it really goes back to what we need in healthcare, the amount of time for the clinicians to spend with their patients to get to know that particular person, and not to say, here's a Black woman who's 39 years old, and I think I know already about her breast cancer risks and her life.
Right.
But that goes back to the bigger system, which is not giving people that time. And it does feel a little bit that everything ends up being about, you need to go out and educate yourself. You're in a broken system, which is definitely profiting some people. But it's up to you to get better at your job. And I think that people might be a little bit like, screw you. How much can I do? Why is this? I'm overworked. I don't have enough time with my patients. Now I have to go do some more education. The education might not even be that good. I think that would just burn me out. So
right.
It's true.
It's true. Yeah. And we're seeing a lot of burnout in the healthcare industry right now anyway. They've been overwhelmed, especially since the pandemic started. Oh my goodness.
We were talking about nursing shortage, and of course staffing these days. You see hiring bonuses for all the different disciplines in end-of-life care, actually, for hospice teams. And I told Jerry, I said, when I started in nursing 32 years ago, they were offering hire-on bonuses. This is not a new thing. A nursing shortage is not a new thing, but it has gotten so significantly more severe over the last few years. We could have 16 podcasts and never solve all. It's so multi-layered: society, cultural, healthcare industry, you name it.
It's a lot to deal with, right?
It is.
It's so much to deal with. And then the pandemic, of course, really put so much pressure onto individuals within healthcare. I would imagine, and of course we're hearing these stories, that the fading trust and expertise in this country is also really taking a toll on people. All of us want to have our experience and our expertise recognized, I may not know what you want to do with your life, but I have the background to be able to help you make informed decisions, right?
Right.
And if you think that I can't help you make those decisions, and yet my job is to still take care of you, that gets really hard. That would wear me out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. I think so. Well, I'm so glad that Endwell is doing something so significant to help the healthcare industry, especially the end-of-life piece of that industry, because that's really one of the things that's been so significantly overlooked has been the end of life. So thank you for what you're doing at Endwell. What's next for Endwell? What's the next few months look like? Are there plans to have another virtual conference, or are we going to have another in person? What's going to happen there?
Well, we were hoping to have an in-person this year, but we decided that we're just too small an organization and it's still too complicated out there to do something in December. So we are hoping to have a live event sometime next year. We have, for this year, we ended up kind of thinking, what are some of the biggest ways that we can influence culture? And so we're not doing an event this year. What we're doing is we have worked with some extraordinary foundations who are funding us to work with an organization called Hollywood Health and Society, which Norman Lear set up at the USC Annenberg School of Journalism. And he set this up quite a while ago to bring accurate and compelling stories about health and education. Health and science to showrunners, writers, producers, and directors of the major TV shows and movies. And so we have just embarked on a project with them to bring storylines about end of life and accurate information about end of life and the whole range of stuff: grief, psychedelics, medical aid in dying, palliative care, hospice care, what's a good death, all of that stuff, to Hollywood. And that's an 18-month program. We're really, really excited about that. We're already getting some bites from lead producers. And so,
Nice.
yes. And it's one, eventually we would like to have a permanent end of life media center, because we're not the first people to have thought about engaging with Hollywood around these stories. And we saw we saw kind of an uptick in the 90s and early 2000s. And then, but, if it's just about, or if all the funding allows is for us to have a couple meetings and, some luncheons and whatever, it just doesn't stick because people come and go. So we want to do that. And then we are launching our own podcast in October. We'll be taking 9 of our favorite talks. We have way more than 9 favorite talks. So all of the people who have spoken with us at Endwell, we love you all, but some of them are definitely better suited for audio than others. Alua Arthur's, Jessica Hansen's, we've got Jeremy Saunders. I mean, we've got a really great range of people. And that's going to launch in mid-October. And we have updated our website about halfway to where we would like it to go. We're still trying to raise money to take it the rest of the way. I would say that the rest of the year, I will be really focused on how do we add more resources to the website? How do we really build out links and kind of top lines about some of the important stuff that our community is letting us know that they want. And then we'll continue to we do so much on social media. We just love social media. Our community is super engaged across all channels. We just broke the 11,000 mark on TikTok, and we just launched. So, but look, next year we will definitely have some kind of convening.
Awesome. Yeah. So what is on Endwell's wish list for end-of-life care?
Well, Endwell's wish list for end-of-life care would be that every single person, probably from the ages of, 15 and above, maybe even younger, is more comfortable with talking about and engaging around the experiences of serious illness and end of life. And if this happens, we then believe that the systems around end of life will improve, because the systems themselves will now be asked to bring in much more of the human dimension into how we care for people at end of life. Joy, love, connection, a dog on the bed, your 2-year-old great grandchild eating ice cream next to you. I mean, all the stuff that right now we're like, oh, that's just horrible. Well, the only people it's horrible for, is the system. It's not horrible for the people who are dying.
Right.
We would like to see every single clinician trained in having these conversations, in caring for people at end of life, in helping people really think about their goals and values. We would love to see death doulas and other people who are able to connect people with the cultural and clinical resources that are available. Death doulas, as you know, are not clinicians, but they do know a lot about the healthcare system. They have to learn a lot about it. And I think that we would like to see end of life and serious illness be considered a stage of life that has all the same possibilities for personal breakthroughs, transcendence, all the stuff that we're looking for. I mean, to me, a great idea would be if we sort of thought of it as being a teenager again, and all that stuff as a teenager you want to know, and all the things you want to try. And imagine if we said to people, you know what? Really, you're dying. Nothing you're going to do right now is going to be terrible for you. So go have your life, or that thing that they do, that sort of wild year, just like go out there and we'll help you live as fully as possible through to the end. I mean, imagine if we set up a system that was about that. It would just upend everything, which would be kind of fun. And then we'd be out of business, which, it's not our goal to be in business forever. Endwell does not want to be, pushing this conversation. We want the cultural to have such a large aha moment that we can go do other, social work. I mean, that's our thing. We are like social justice problem solvers, and there's a lot out there that needs to be solved. And I guess the final thing I would say is our hope would be that this is my weird little hope, if we can integrate the idea of mortality and can have more of a generous spirit towards the stuff that scares us, maybe we can solve some of these other problems like climate change, like societal injustices, and this terrifying solidifying of our country into these sectors that can no longer talk to each other. I do think that if we can have this breakthrough around one of the things that scares us the most, that we might be able to break through with everything else. But that's just me.
I like that. But that sounds awesome. And
It does.
I would like to see that wish, that last one that you talk about, to come true, because we know that those things need to change. And so if Endwell can somehow be a part of making that happen, we'll do our part and encourage that and help to make that reality. So thank you so much, Tracy, for what you are doing at Endwell and for what Endwell is doing to help the end-of-life industry. We are so grateful to you for everything that you're doing.
Jerry, thank you. Helen, thank you. I mean, we are doing this work because of people like you. We're doing this work because Shoshana saw so many people within healthcare who actively want things to be better, and have such powerful visions. And yet their conversation was so stuck within healthcare that really all we're doing is we're just trying to open the door so these conversations can happen on a wider basis and a more diverse and interdisciplinary basis. I mean, that's our job. We don't make any of this up. You guys are out there doing this incredible work. We just want to put it out there and help people connect to it. So thank you.
Well, tell Shoshana that we are so grateful for her courage in starting this organization. She's awesome, and we are very grateful for what she's doing.
She is awesome.
Thank you, and thank you, Shoshana.
Thank you, and have a wonderful rest of your days, and thank you for inviting me.
I am going to say it again. I am so impressed with the work that Endwell is doing. They're getting out information that people need to hear, not only people in the general population, but physicians,
nurses,
clergy,
social
work. We need to hear these things.
Yes.
Because we know that 100% of people who are alive today are going to die at some point.
That's a pretty good statistic when you think about it, because what other statistic, what other area can you say that about? That you know exactly, we know exactly 100% of the people living on this planet today are going to die.
Yeah, there's not one.
No.
There's nothing as sure as death and taxes.
Taxes, ooh. And some people don't pay their taxes, so death is more assured than that. So endwellproject.org is how you can access their videos. Alua Arthur, BJ Miller, August De Los Reyes, Jessica Hansen. You're going to see a lot of these names. Some of these people are designers, authors. Some of them are healthcare innovators. Alua Arthur is a death doula. There's a lot of conversation revolving around this topic, but it's coming from so many different viewpoints, so many different perspectives.
One of the things that Tracy said was she wants to be able to have conversations from a different perspective.
Yes.
Something original, something that hasn't really been discussed or thought of before. And I think that's one of the things about Endwell that I really, really like.
Right. Diversity of topic, diversity of speaker. And so when you go into their website, they have a section called Where to Start. And they have different icons that you can click on. If you're a patient, a caregiver, you're dealing with grief, you work in healthcare, you're an entrepreneur, or you're just curious. So there's content for a lot of different people. And like she said, everybody is their audience. So with that in mind, we want to tell you, she mentioned it in the interview, is Endwell has a new podcast coming out, and you will absolutely want to check that out. The name of it is Endwell with Dr. Shoshana Ungerleider. And you're going to want to check that out. They're going to have some of their talks on there, and it's going to evolve from there in season 2. So there are a lot of good opportunities there.
Right. So their first podcast comes out on October the 9th, which is just a couple of days away. So go ahead, put it in your calendar to check out their new podcast that's going to first publish on October the 9th. So our thanks to Tracy for being with us and sharing this incredible organization and what they're doing. We are so thankful that we have the opportunity to connect with them and to connect with Tracy.
Thanks for listening to The Heart of Hospice. I'm Helen Bauer here with Jerry Fenter. Because we know your hospice journey is 24/7, you can always find us at theheartofhospice.com. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you're listening, and please take a minute to leave a rating and a review.
To connect with us, you can just send an email to host@theheartofhospice.com. And you can also find us on social media. And remember, no matter who you are or where you are in your hospice journey, you are the heart of hospice.